Hello, my name is Sebastien Dupuis. I'm a classical concert pianist and piano teacher in Zurich. And this video will be about the complete Liszt edition that I have here. I'm actually a big Liszt fan since always, and I play a lot of Liszt. I've made a lot of Liszt recording. I'm now busy recording the 12th Liszt etude that I know since some years. And I finally finished to collect his complete work, and actually that's the EDITIO MUSICA BUDAPEST edition. They actually also finished the complete supplementary part here, so it's in 3 parts. So I will talk a bit about this edition, why I find it fascinating. I actually started to buy the books years ago, and I started to practice the etudes. I bought the etudes, the first volume is the etudes, the transcendental etudes, and this book I have, it's like almost broken because I use it so often, but actually it resisted quite well. You can see that's the first volume. That's the one I use the most. Started to be a bit broken here, but actually it's still in a very good condition. And I always decided to buy the blue cover because the blue cover are a bit stronger, a bit stiffer, and they have this comment section that the flexible variant doesn't have here. That's a bit more flexible. It's a cheaper version. It doesn't have the comment section that this one has. So for me as a pianist and as a Liszt fanatic and specialist, I like to go to the when it's composed, what are the stuff, maybe sometimes there are some doubts about edition or about some stuff Liszt wrote. There are also variants there that you don't have here. Now this one is twice the price of this one, so if you are on a budget or you don't want to spend too much money on the edition, this one is the best edition probably because it's the cheapest. And they even did actually a separate edition that I have here. For example, I have the Liszt Sonata in a separate edition. They edited all the most common works of Liszt in separate edition, also very flexible cover with critical notes and this kind of quality of cover. They are also cheaper, of course. So, how is it made? Like, they have actually 3. So they started apparently the edition in the 70s with musicologues, people who were searching, watching the manuscript, watching the first edition, the second edition. They did a lot of work on the edition and on the printing, and they also made the research on non-printed Liszt works and what's the difference because Liszt actually is a specialist of having many versions of his works. For example, you can have the Après une lecture de Dante, there is an early version, there is a late version. Some of his transcriptions or paraphrases are sometimes 2, 3 or even 4 versions. Sometimes the versions are quite similar and sometimes they're like very different. Like in, for example, the Année de Pèlerinage, he did first a collection of I think 13 works or even 20 in 2 different books. And then actually later, years later, so this was in his 20s, 30s when he was playing a lot of concerts, and when later he moved to Weimar, he reworked a lot of his works, and he, for example, changed Allée de Pèlerinage. He took some of the works out of these 2 books and added some new one, and he took them out of the first books but changed them a bit. Some are like completely different, some are a bit the same. Or another example is the Consolation. You have 6 Consolation, and you have 2 versions of the Consolation. For example, you can buy it in this flexible version. You can buy the Consolation, you will have both versions. The early version actually, they are a bit similar to the late versions with some small changes. But the number 3, actually first version of number 3, he used later for his first Hungarian Rhapsody, or is the same as the first Hungarian Rhapsody. And he composed a completely new Consolation number 3, which is actually the most famous of them, that I recorded, that I play. It's on a video on YouTube. So the first part actually they started in the 70s, and they planned to print all of Liszt's works, including orchestral and for all instruments. They started with the piano and they did the first series, which was all the original works of Liszt. So the first series goes from here until here. So you have 18 volumes of his original works. So you start with the etudes, you have 2 volumes of the etudes, you have the transcendental, you have the concert etudes and the Paganini etudes. Then you have the Hungarian Rhapsodies, 2 volumes too, 1 to 9 then until 20. Then you have the Sonata and some concert solo, that's a separate volume. And then you have the 3 Années de Pèlerinage, it's 3 books too. Then you have, it's written always in German here, verschiedene zyklische Werke. You have 2 volumes of this, so the cyclical works, quite important too, because Liszt was inventing this force of cyclical work. It's works that use the same theme from the beginning to the end, and the theme is always transforming. Then you have this einzelne Charakterstück, so lonely house, like character pieces, but single pieces, not like sonata or stuff. Then you have this Tänze, Marsche und Scherzi, so he wrote a lot of Mephisto Waltz, for example, it's there. He wrote the Mephisto Polka, it's also in this, the Mephisto Waltz, the Valse Impromptue also. Valse Oubliée, he wrote some Valse Oubliée, it's there too. Then you have the, so there you have, what did I say, 2 volumes of this. Then you have the Klavierversion Eigene Werke, that's his own transcription of his own works, for example. Well, actually, the Mephisto Waltz, it was first a symphonic poem, and then he changed it in he made a piano version of it. I'm not sure if it's the first one or the other one, but for sure the next one. And then, for example, his oratorios, because he wrote oratorios, like a religious work with choir and orchestra, he did some transcription of part of it also, that's also there. Then, of course, you have all his late works. Most of his late works are a bit spread in the genres. And actually, then you have, that's volume 17, you have 3 volumes of transcription of own works, and then you have one last volume with the Etude Opus 6, that's the first version of his Transcendental Etude, so it's this Etude in 12 exercise, and some national works here. Then the second part, and by the way, this comes with a, if you have the whole book, there is a catalog of everything, because sometimes you just need to know where is the legend number 2, for example, where is it? And either you watch in every volume here where it is, it's just avoid you to take every volume and check, or you go to the end, there's a alphabetic order of the work, so you can look legend and then look it up in which volume it is. Second series, they did, so second series is coming until here, so that's 24 volumes, and that's its transcription, paraphrase, and this kind of stuff. And they ordered this in freie Bearbeitung, so that's free arrangements, so that's all the paraphrase, like, so to make the difference, Liszt sometimes made a transcription one-to-one from work. For example, he the Beethoven symphonies at the end and the Schubert stuff at the end, mostly that's a transcription of something. So he took the work and then just put it on the piano. Now with the Schubert works, he adds some stuff, but basically he took the original work and tried to either add some stuff, but he didn't really change the work. Paraphrase and such are actually mostly from operas, and from an opera he took all the main famous theme and he made a big mix of it and made it a new work using the theme. So they make this difference between kind of one-to-one transcription and the more free stuff. So freie Bearbeitung is actually a lot of volumes because it's going until here. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize that it's so much. So the free transcriptions is from here to here, like it's 15 volumes. That's a lot, and actually that's why Liszt is famous. You know, he was and that's also his concert time, because from, let's say, I don't know when he started with concerts, around 10 or something, or maybe even earlier, until when he retired in Weimar, 35, 37. He did a lot of concerts, improvised works on famous theme, sometimes wrote them maybe before and then played them, or sometimes improvised them and then wrote them after and made some correction, don't know which direction, probably both. And these are all this transcription and stuff he did at that time. Now, later, Liszt was also a very big support of other composers, so because he was so famous, he felt he had to help other people. Like, for example, either dead composers, he felt the responsibility of rediscover Schubert, so he did a lot of transcription of Schubert works to make the public rediscover his works, because he admired Schubert a lot. And he did this for Beethoven too. He put his symphonies in piano version, probably one side to able to, for example, I can play the symphonies on my piano. I would never be able to play the symphonies if I didn't have a quite good transcription of it. And he did it in a way that it's giving the whole orchestral dimension back to the piano, which a normal one-to-one transcription doesn't give. There are transcriptions for piano of Beethoven symphonies, sometimes for 2 pianos, 4 hands or something, and they try to give just the notes. They take the notes from the orchestra and they put it on the piano. When you have twice the same note, it becomes one note of the piano. Liszt actually sometimes decided to change the notes just to have the effect of it. So, for example, instead of one thing you cannot do transcribing an orchestra is like when a trumpet, for example, is making, or violin is making a crescendo one note and keeping it very long is something you cannot do on the piano because you press the note and the sound goes off directly. So what he did, for example, is kind of tremolos or arpeggios or kind of complex arpeggios he was very famous for, and this gave the effect more than just staying on the note, which doesn't work when you transcribe. So he made this version to give the possibility to the pianist to play them and to rediscover, to help artists rediscover, the public rediscover some forgotten musician or some unfamous musician of his time. He transcribed a lot of stuff of composers we don't know today anymore. One example, Meyerbeer, is maybe one of the famous that we forgot, but Meyerbeer, most of people don't know him. There is also like Lassen, it's also a composer nobody knows. He transcribed many works and actually interesting works. So this was his transcription work and time here, going on here, and then you have actually the transcriptionen, so that's the one-to-one, what I said, that's going from actually here to here. You have like 9 volumes of this, and you have the Beethoven Symphony in 3 volumes, and the Schubert stuff, and Beethoven, and the Bach Prelude and Fugues for organ that he transcribed for piano. Also very interesting. And then actually they did a 3rd series later that they finished lately. That is again 16 volumes of all the important early version of his works. So as I said, he did sometimes 2, 3, 4 versions of his works. He corrected them, and when they thought they are interesting enough, they are different enough to publish them, they did in these volumes here. But this is basically a recapitulation of what we have there, just other versions. So his whole work goes until here, and then some of early versions goes until here. And actually also there's 3 volumes of exercise here, the volume 1, 2, 3 of the supplementary. These are exercise. I did them all, I tried them all. They're quite difficult. He did this in his late years. I don't know if Edition asked him to do or if he decided to do it, but that's actually an important part of Liszt's life, because when he was 20, after hearing Paganini, he decided he had to become a better pianist, having a better technique, and he started practicing exercise every day, 5 hours of exercise. And at the end of his life, he decided to write 3 books of exercise. So you can see exercise was an important part of Liszt's idea of playing piano. And these exercises are very interesting. They are incredibly difficult. They can be super boring, but they're very interesting. The first part, for example, he's focusing on finger independence. So he had this idea that every finger should have the same strength, the same speed, and then he's doing exercise on every single finger, practicing the finger excessively. And then later he's doing like all the kind of jumps you need in all kind of different situations, always going through all tonalities. So he's doing one exercise, and the exercise goes through all tonalities, so you at the same time practice always tonalities. For example, he's doing just normal scales, or he's doing like first repeated thirds, and the next time he's doing it again in another tonality. And also he's also proposing many different fingerings. For example, there is the scales in thirds, there he's proposing different fingerings for the scales. So that's the complete edition of Liszt. It's actually 58 volumes, almost 60 volumes. It's a lot. There is actually, I don't think there is another composer that composed as much for piano. You can see examples, like I have the Brahms complete works there, it's 3 volumes. I have Mozart, probably almost complete works, it's 5 volumes. If you want to have all of Chopin works, where's Chopin? It's here. Chopin is actually more or less this. Here, that's Chopin, no, that's Beethoven. That's Chopin, all his piano work before he didn't live so long. That's all Schumann piano work, 3 volumes. So if you want to have complete edition of other composer, mostly it's like not more than 10 volumes. Here we have almost 60 volumes. Well, actually, let's say maybe minus this one, so we're like around 50 volumes of his piano works, and some volumes has 200 pages, some have like 100. It's worth investing because it's a urtext. It's like there is a real work behind. It's not like an edition that just copies the previous edition. There are tons of mistakes. And of course, there can be mistakes, like in every, like imagine how many notes you have to print if you don't have to make one mistake. There's probably one or two mistakes there, but basically they did the work, they did the research, what you expect as a pianist from an edition, and it's the only one who did the complete edition of Liszt. There is a ton of comments behind. I think if you want to buy Liszt music, definitely I think that's the best one you can buy. Don't say the other one are not good, like Henley, they are also edit Liszt, and it's also a good work behind, of course. You can buy it on the website of EDITIO MUSICA BUDAPEST. That's a complete Liszt edition in blue. You have it in grey, flexible like I say, and you have the separate edition of the most famous work of Liszt. You can buy also separate. It took me a long time. I bought the first one myself, then I had a student later who went a lot to Hungary, a Hungarian student. She brought me some from Hungary sometimes when she went. And then I had a collaboration with EDITIO MUSICA BUDAPEST lately. That's also why I'm doing the video. But no worry, I do collaboration and advertisement for stuff that I'm myself convinced. I don't do advertisement just for money if I don't like the thing. I don't need money, so I just really it's because I love the edition, because I'm a freak of Liszt, and you can see otherwise who would buy the whole stuff, or who I bought most of it, yes. Who would have the whole thing in his bibliothèque if he was not a fanatic of Liszt? I have it, I recommend it, and I will go next week to Budapest. Actually visit the edition and see how they print it, see how they work with the manuscript, have some interviews of the people working there. I will visit Liszt Museum too, actually, see his pianos on which he practiced, and tons of his like his apartment, how it was looking in Budapest, because he was for a while director of Budapest Museum, Budapest Conservatorium. He was the first actually official director of the Budapest Conservatoire, and he had an apartment there on the last floor, and they moved his apartment in another building, and that's now the Liszt Museum. So we'll visit these two and visit where he's coming from. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it was informative enough. I will make some other videos showing the works, making videos on the Liszt Etudes, the Rhapsodies and some stuff later. Thank you for watching.